Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a Kickstarter preview. This one is for Volleyball High from Medieval Lords. This is a fast-paced hand management game all about anime volleyball.
Yeah, that's right. This is a two-player head-to-head game that takes place on a volleyball court. If you look down, you'll see that the game is set up in front of us. We do want to say that this is, of course, a Kickstarter prototype, so you are not looking at the final product. Any parts of this can change, but what isn't going to change is the court itself. You're going to have 6 players out on the court and 2 in your reserve. In addition, every player is going to get a deck of cards based on their team. You take a generic deck, and then you mix in a few special cards that reflect your special teammates, and then you take the special coach for your team. That's basically everything that's going to come into play. You're going to hand all that out when you set the game up.
Yeah, in the copy we have, there are 4 teams. I'm playing as the Hawk Institution. This is one of the teams, and this is the coach for it. The coach is going to have a variable power for every player, or every team. This one has draw 1 card when your synergy meter reaches 4. That makes no sense to you right now, but it will hopefully in a moment when we explain that. But the point is, all the coaches are going to bring a little variety to the game. Ryan also mentioned some special characters. You're going to have those out on the court with these mini cards, but you're also going to have 2 special moves per character in your deck as well. And that's signified by these cards here, in addition to the rest of the cards you're going to have in your deck. I'll explain how one of those cards looks right now. The cards in this game are very much multi-use cards, so you're going to be using them to do a number of different things and hopefully managing your hand accordingly. Really quick, this is the dig card. It's just one of many. Up in the upper right-hand corner here, you have the attack value. If this card is used to send the ball over the net, this is the value that the defender has to be worried about. They have to defend with the next number below that. This blue hand has the defense value. When the ball comes over the net, you're going to discard cards, any number, to match or exceed the attack value of the incoming ball. Then down at the bottom, you're going to have a couple things. At the very bottom is an important stat. This is going to be when you're passing the ball around or sending it over the net, how many spaces it's going to move. As you can see out here on the board, there are 6 spaces on either side of the court, and then actually the net is another space during the rallies of the game. But when you move the ball, it's going to be moved around orthogonally. You can't move it in reverse. It can be put from the front row to the back row, but it can't go snaking around in the air
spin around
magically.
in circles, right?
Exactly. And then right above that, finally, there's going to be a special ability on some cards. Not all cards are going to have this, but the special abilities are triggered with a little icon depicting which phase or which type of action you're using the card to do when that is triggered.
So when you start the game, everyone's going to take their deck, shuffle it up, and then draw 8 cards. And these are the cards you have to play. The hand management comes into effect here. One player is randomly determined to be the server. In this case, it was me. I need to look through this hand of cards and figure out a card that I want to play to serve. I need to be looking at how far I can serve the ball and how strong of a hit I want to deliver, because David is going to have to defend my serve. So, for example, in this instance, I can discard a 5 strike for its bottom value, which lets me move the ball 3 to 4 spaces. And it comes across 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to serve to David.
Yeah, now what's interesting here is he could have decided to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 to the side, depending on what characters I've got going on and where they're placed on my side of the board, because as you play this game, when any one player touches a ball, you're going to flip that card over, so that player's temporarily not available. Now what's cool is if the ball gets sent to a space where a player's already been flipped, the other players can come to the aid, but you have to discard cards in order to effectively move them to that space in order to make the shot. So the first thing I have to concern myself with when the ball comes over to my side is to defend. Again, he used a spike card that had an attack value of 5. So I've got a 5 coming in at me. I have to discard defense cards that equal 5. I've got a block here with a value of 4 and a set with a value of 1. Again, the block and the set are meaningless in this case since I'm using them to defend. I will discard those out of my hand, and now my real turn begins where I can start moving the ball around. I can play any cards out of my hand to move the ball around my side of the court and then get it over the net. I could play 1 card to just send it right back over the net, or I could play a few to move the ball around and hopefully set up a much more significant shot.
Yeah, and every time you do that, you're also increasing your synergy level. So it benefits you to pass the ball along your players, increase your synergy, and then do a heavy hit. However, you can only play 3 cards on your turn.
Yeah, you can only ever hit the ball 3 times on your side. The third one has to send it over to the other side. And remember too that when you're hitting the ball, your players are going to be flipping over on the board. Now, once you have a board full of flipped over players, you're going to wonder, well, what can I do to hit the ball? Well, once the 6th player on your side flips over, they're all going to flip back. So that is yet another thing that you can manage to your advantage. Because at first you're going to think, well, I'm just going to use 1 card to get it back over the net. And if you've ever watched any volleyball, teams can do that, but the other team usually seizes that opportunity. You're benefited by moving the ball around in a number of different ways. One way in particular is to set up a heavy attack. Now, we haven't talked about this, but when Ryan sent the card over to me, I had to defend out of my hand. I got to choose those cards. If I set up a heavy attack, which is done by setting the ball or moving the ball from one space in my front line to another space in my front line, then it's going to get the benefit of a heavy attack. When a heavy attack occurs, the ball is going to be sent over, and in this case, if it was sent over with a value of 5, he has to still defend against it, but I'm choosing the cards out of his hand at random. So what Ryan will do is he'll pick a number of cards and saying 4. Hold his hand out, I'll pick 4 of those, and he might defend, and he might not. We have to look at the defense values.
Yeah, and if you ever fail to defend, then that's a point for your opponent. So it's very important to defend when you can. And another reason you might want to move that ball around is because these little players all have these little icons down here at the bottom. This shows attacks that they're proficient with. If you get the ball to one of these players, when they flip over to send the ball across the line, if the color of the card you play matches their icons, you get a bonus to your hit value.
Yeah, that attack value can increase. Now, like we said, this is hand management. So at a certain point, you might end up with only like 3 or 4 cards in your hand, depending on how many of you've used. The last thing you have to manage in this is that synergy meter. Because like we said earlier, that's going to go up for every hit. So if I start my defensive round in the middle of the synergy meter, I hit it once, it goes up. I hit it again, it goes up one more time. If I hit it another time, this is going to reset back to 1. So I've spent a ton of my cards, but then I'm only drawing 1 card. So I'm very ill prepared for the next defensive round.
Yeah, and that's another thing that on your turn, if you don't have enough cards to get the ball over the net, or if you don't have enough cards to defend from a ball coming over the net, you're going to give your opponent a point either way.
Exactly. In this game, like we said, this is a fast-paced game. You're going to play this probably to 2 or 3 points. So you can get this game done in probably 15, 20 minutes tops, and then play it again. This is meant to be a very, very fast-paced, simple introduction really to hand management, because you really do have to give a lot of thought to how you're going to be using these cards, how you're going to be managing your synergy meter, not to mention how you're managing your team here. One thing we didn't mention is these 2 reserve players. These reserve players, really the only difference, like Ryan just pointed out, are those little icons on the bottoms of the card. If you find you're part of the way through your deck and you know that some of the cards you have left in the deck might benefit these players, at the beginning of any one rally, that's when a service is performed, you can actually swap out those players for any of the other generic players. One thing you can never do is take any of the unique team players or the special players off of the court. They will always have to remain there.
So that is Volleyball High from Medieval Lords. It is on Kickstarter right now, so follow the link to look at their Kickstarter page, and then come back here with any questions or comments. And please subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow everything we do, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.